Hour number 3, live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid, our third and final hour. Up until 11 a.m. Eastern, he is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. Love to get the juices flowing bright and early on this Thursday morning. And here to start off our third and final hour, Donnie, with a quarterback debate and who has the most pressure as a quarterback entering this divisional round weekend in the National Football League postseason. We asked the public who has the most pressure on them this weekend to win and advance to a conference championship. The three options listed at SportsGrid TV on Twitter: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy. Most of the public going with Lamar or Josh Allen. Lamar's got 44% of the vote. Josh Allen about 40%. Do you agree with the public sentiment in our Fade the Public poll?
I do agree with the public sentiment. They got it right here, but I just thought the public might even be a little more heavy-handed towards Lamar Jackson because he seems to be much more of a lightning rod than Josh Allen. Where has it been with Josh Allen over the past couple of years? Well, he can't get to the Super Bowl, but he kept on having to bump heads with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and losing games, which quite frankly they shouldn't have lost, but it wasn't his fault that they lost those games. But we keep getting back to Lamar Jackson. It always seems like since he came into professional football, Ben, we have the referendum on Lamar Jackson. Can he be an actual really good quarterback in the pros? Is he just a great athlete and sort of make some plays at times? He's already won an MVP. He's about to be a two-time MVP. You need to coronate this season, Ben, with at least a Super Bowl appearance. Because quite frankly, as I pointed out, if C.J. Stroud comes in as a rookie with a rookie head coach, as a double-digit underdog in your own building when you rested, how can that actually work out in your favor if you're Lamar Jackson? As we welcome in the radio audience, you're watching and listening live to the Early Line Thursday morning edition, going over some hot topics here. It's Ben Stephen, Donnie Rightside, particularly with Lamar Jackson, Ben. That's where I'm at. It can't happen. That's why the pressure's on him.
So I voted for Josh Allen just because I wanted to goose the results, as I often try to do, because you, Donnie, you know I like to do that a little bit just for the debate to spark the conversation. I do think Josh has a ton of pressure on him. The narratives out of the final game of the divisional round between the Bills and the Chiefs are going to be astronomical. They are going to be nauseating by the time we get to conference championship Sunday as well. We'll talk about those in just a moment. But I thought Lamar was going to run away with this poll because you're right, Donnie. More than likely, Lamar Jackson is going to win the 2023 NFL MVP award, regardless of what happens on Saturday afternoon in the Charm City. So that would be 2 MVPs for Lamar in the last 5 years, 2019 and 2023. And in 2019, the Ravens were also the league's best team, the number 1 overall seed in the AFC playoff picture, had the open bye week, and lost in the divisional round at home to the Tennessee Titans. If they replicate that in 2023, the questions are going to be out there. Baltimore as an organization last won the Super Bowl in 2012 with Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback. They have not reached an AFC championship since that point. Lamar Jackson himself, a 1-3 playoff record as the starter at quarterback. Baltimore bounced last year in the wild card round by their divisional foes in Cincinnati. Of course, Lamar was injured. It was Snoop Huntley making that start. But Lamar Jackson, just 1-3 in his playoff career. That one win in the wild card round back in the 2020 NFL postseason. Lamar Jackson has never played in an AFC championship game. The other two guys around him in our poll, Brock Purdy during his rookie campaign, at least slightly played in the NFC title last year in Philly. And Josh Allen has played in an AFC championship game as well. A ton of pressure on both Josh and Brock, but I think most of it is on Lamar Jackson this time around as well, because everything sets up for Baltimore to at least host an AFC title game next weekend.
And I think that's where the vote should be coming in, from that angle here, because when you take a look at the question itself and just try to separate it from the environment they're playing in, right? Which quarterback has the most pressure on him this weekend? Technically, it is Josh Allen, because Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are on the other side. If that's not pressure, I don't know what is. But from a traditional standpoint, you're saying to yourself, well, yes, Baltimore should win this game easily. They're double-digit favorites, and the biggest advantage you can have in the playoffs is getting a bye. Just like the San Francisco 49ers got it, they also took that de facto bye way, Ben, in Week 18. You didn't see their superstar players play in that game. So they're rested and ready against what we should think is an inferior opponent. So if you go on the football field on Sunday, or let's just say this weekend, Josh Allen loses that game, Was everybody going to get mad at Josh Allen? Now, granted, if the game is 31-3 and Josh Allen throws 5 interceptions, yes. But let's just say he loses in a tough battle. Nobody's going to be like, oh, Josh Allen can't be the quarterback of the Bills. They have to move on, right? That's not going to be the case. But I'm telling you right now, you signed one of the most lucrative contracts in the history of professional sports, and you get the number 1 seed only to get to the playoffs and lose to a rookie quarterback on the opposite side. That's where that real-life pressure kicks in. Now, granted, as I said, Allen, tons of pressure this weekend. But for me, Lamar Jackson can't go into that game. And even as I said, he doesn't need, Ben, for 325 and 3 touchdowns. They just need to win that football game. You know, that's all it takes here. So that's where the pressure is coming from. If he can't hold up and just win a football game against an inferior opponent in his own building, dome team coming outdoors in cold weather with a rookie quarterback, then I don't know what that pressure is supposed to be. He has to win. And if he doesn't, that's going to be embarrassing, not only for the Ravens, but even more so for Lamar.
One narrative I can't stand, and I'm already getting pre-mad about, if the Ravens somehow do get upset at home on Saturday afternoon. Lamar's just a running quarterback. That's why you need somebody to air it out in the pocket. I'm going to debunk that. I think my co-host, Donnie Rightside, might lean in just a little bit. But there will be the conversation about the ceiling with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback in Baltimore. If Patrick Mahomes in his first true road playoff start does do what he has done in his previous 15 playoff starts, which is win 12 of the 15 times, even in Buffalo, in Western New York on Sunday, it's not going to be like, oh, Josh Allen is a fraud. But again, it will be the conversation of always a bridesmaid, never a bride. With the 3 consecutive AFC East Divisional championships the last 3 years, only resulting in 1 conference championship game, make that 4 in a row with the victory this year in 2023. If they come up short at home for the 2nd straight year in Orchard Park, of course, last year getting routed by the Bengals in a game that Joe Burrow and Cincy, even with the snow, just looked like the far superior team, those storylines will continue. We haven't spoken a lot about Brock Purdy, Donnie. I guess the narrative would be, see, it's everybody else in San Francisco that's better than Purdy is, especially if he is outdueled by Jordan Love. But I don't think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on Brock at this moment.
No, I don't think there is either. And quite frankly, it's almost like that guy that you like, who can handle the pressure easiest? It's Brock Purdy. Why? Because nobody expected much of him coming into the NFL, and he fought his way into the NFL and fought his way to try to get out of the narrative here. So that's why we're looking at Brock Purdy saying, like, yeah, they're probably going to win the game, but the pressure on that offense is not on Brock Purdy. It's just on Kyle Shanahan dialing up the right plays. Whereas Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, it feels like it's all on them, and they'll wield that hand. Yeah.
Sneaky pressure as well. Of course, Patrick Mahomes has the pedigree to trump everybody else in this field. But first road playoff game, if he loses, the narratives will be there as well. We continue to preview the divisional round next.
Quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you're replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out in the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions' offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game, and I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the early line, live right here on this Thursday. Craig Mish gets us ready for the divisional round weekend, now just 48 hours away of the NFL postseason. 2 games Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. We preview all 4 games right here, right now. Craig, of course, the host of Newswire, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. He is the man in the middle here on the early line. Craig, as always, we appreciate the time on this Thursday here on TEL.
Can't wait to get into it. Lots of signings in baseball yesterday. Looks like everybody's now officially off the board. Or not. We'll do football. Why not?
No.
We'll do some football.
Listen, the source of the source, Donnie right side, always waiting for just a little bit of knowledge. But we'll focus on the football this weekend. Craig, a historic matchup on Saturday night. The number 1 seed, the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC, now into the playoff fold. They face off against a familiar foe, the Green Bay Packers. It will be the 10th all-time playoff meeting between these two franchises. Now a new NFL record for the most ever postseason games between two teams in the long history of the National Football League. And it's a 9.5-point spread in favor of San Francisco. Highest total of the weekend as well at 50.5. Craig, what do you expect on Saturday night in Santa Clara?
Well, Ben, what I'm trying to honestly do with these games is look at them in totality as opposed to one. And, it's just kind of the way that I look at these games, especially when you get to the playoffs, meaning that I take a look at the 2 number 1 seeds and I ask myself, are both teams going to blow out the other, meaning that they're laying a big number? And I don't think so. I think one of those 2 games has the potential to be close. And this is actually the one that I think has a chance to, just because of the way that the Packers seem to be playing on the offensive side of the ball. I think anything goes. And I think that even in a situation where if you look at it, and in the fourth quarter, the score is 31-10, 49ers, and the Packers have the ball at the end of the game, you would feel really good about the chance of the Packers going down the field and getting that one score just to cover the spread. May have no chance of winning the game whatsoever. Very similar in the way that Buffalo played against Pittsburgh last week. Just kind of close your eyes and dream for a minute. A 31-17 score. You have Jordan Love and the Packers instead of Mason Rudolph and the Steelers, and you feel pretty confident that there's a chance that there's a backdoor cover there. So of the 2 games with the big spreads, I do think this is the one that I would lean toward taking the points with Green Bay. I don't think they're going to beat San Francisco, but I absolutely could see a closer game. And historically speaking, these 2 teams have played each other so many times through the years. It does set up for a classic matchup.
For me, Craig, the toughest game of the weekend for me to handicap is that Green Bay-San Francisco game because I'm just trying to still make what I get out of the Packers offense going up against that San Francisco defense that is going to be rested and ready. But a hot offense, man, maybe they can work some magic here. Let's flip it over here to Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Detroit, the Motor City. Baker Mayfield going to come in and try to work his magic once again like he did on Monday night against the Philadelphia Eagles. Jared Goff on the other side looking to beat the blitz against Todd Bowles' defense. Most outlets out here, including the FanDuel Sportsbook, Craig, listed as a 6.5-point favorite here for the Detroit Lions, a total listed at 48.5. Is it more Mayfield magic, or does Detroit get yet another victory and appear in the NFC Championship game?
I mean, it's sort of incredible to think that we are 2 weeks away from the potential of the Buccaneers playing in the Super Bowl. I mean, this is legit. I mean, anything can happen in sports. Do we really want to go down this road after this week I mean, look, Buccaneers win. They're one game away. I mean, Detroit feels a little bit more comfortable in thinking, okay, like we would accept that. But, the way that I view this game this week is in particular with the Buccaneers. I just have not been impressed with them all season long. I know that they've played well late and they got that big win against Philadelphia. And at the same time, I'm sorely disappointed with the way that the Lions defense played last week against the Rams. I mean, I'm not even sure. Some people said the Lions were the right side last week, even though they didn't cover. I don't know that I'd buy that. The Rams were in the red zone a lot and kicking field goals there, and they did a good job there. So the way that I view this is maybe the most exciting game of the weekend in terms of scoring. Goff indoors leads me to believe that there's going to be some points scored by the Lions, and I think Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell have to take a look at the film last week and say, hey, I mean, we got to push as hard in the second half as we did in the first half last week. I don't know what the Lions were doing against the Rams. Played for the first time all year, played super conservative, I felt like. So I like the over in this game. I think a lot of points are scored. I think Baker Mayfield goes down the field. I don't think the Lions receivers can cover those guys on Tampa Bay. A lot of offensive weapons on both sides. So I think that we could be in for a shootout in this game in particular.
The Lions secondary has been getting torched here as of late. Baker Mayfield has also thrown for at least 283 yards in 4 of the last 5 for the Bucs, including 337 on Monday night against Philadelphia. His passing yards prop 255.5. The other former number one overall pick on the other side, Jared Goff, 270 and a hook. A quarterback showdown, the marquee matchup of the divisional round in the final and 4th game of this weekend on Sunday evening, Craig, in Orchard Park, New York. It's the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. A rematch of the sensational 2021 divisional round game that we saw inside Arrowhead Stadium. A 2.5-point spread in favor of Buffalo. Craig, are we in store for another instant classic on Sunday evening in Western New York?
Yeah, this game in particular is great for networks like us and social media, for people to plant their flag and, make these guarantees about saying, the Chiefs are going to go into Buffalo, they're going to win. Oh, no, the Bills have turned around, they're going to win. And for us all to be just honest with ourselves, we have no idea. Nobody has any clue what's going to happen in this game between these two teams. These have been the most unpredictable teams all season long. The Chiefs are up, they're down, they can't score on offense, they play good defense. The Bills, they look like they're done. They're not going to make the playoffs. All of a sudden, they start winning some games. Then as good as they look horrible against the Chargers. Ben, I got to tell you, I could sit here and guarantee a win, plant my flag on some team. I got no opinion whatsoever on this game. My hope is that, as you said, it turns out to be one of the best games of the weekend. But the unpredictability factor between these two teams in particular, I think, is off the charts. I think better plays are to be had across the board this weekend.
Craig, let's get to the Texans time slot as always. It's a time-honored tradition here. The Texans always get the first playoff game of any weekend that they're actually in, and that will be taking place again this weekend on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. C.J. Stroud, who's been a wonderful quarterback in his rookie season, going to take his teams outdoors to take on Lamar Jackson in some cold, windy conditions. A 9.5-point spread and a total of 43.5. What's your viewpoint here from this game between the Texans and the Ravens?
Yeah, the point differential for the Ravens has been the best in the NFL. So this does, I think, have the opportunity to where I think the Ravens can win this one by 2 touchdowns. Again, going back to San Francisco, Generally speaking, in the NFL, with these big lines, usually the dogs do cover. And in the playoffs, it's very hard to get two big spreads covered. So if I had to make a lean or a pick, I think it would be the Ravens. The other thing that you could do, there's two different factors here. I think for a lot of people, especially who are watching the network during the weekend, you can live bet this game. I think you're going to get an indication very early on whether or not Houston stands a chance in this game. For example, if the Ravens have, let's call it a 70-yard drive in 7 minutes, and they just pound that ball in the end zone, they're up 7-0. Boy, I mean, that's going to have Houston up against it almost immediately because they're not going to have those explosive plays like they've had over the course of the playoffs and at the end of the season. And the other thing, obviously, is if you don't want to lay the big number, you could lay the first half number 2. A lot of that would be predicated on who gets the opening kickoff. Generally speaking, both teams, from my research, have been deferring. So that would mean if Houston won, Baltimore would get the ball. If Baltimore won, then Houston would get the ball. But wouldn't it feel good for Baltimore if you took the Ravens in the first half to just march down the field and score? So those would be the two ways I would be looking. I don't think Houston is moving on this week. I think it's the end of the line for them.
A 9.5-point spread in favor of the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Craig, we appreciate the time. We'll see you on Newswire in just about 40 minutes. The prop perspective for the weekend next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out in the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're still 48 hours away from the divisional round of the NFL postseason, but we take the early line approach here on the early line with the prop perspective. And Tom Vecchio joining us here on this Thursday on TEL. I'm Ben, he's Donnie. Vecchio, the man in the middle, joining us on behalf of FanDuel. The jack of all trades, some bets for this Thursday night slate as well, in an early forecast of what we are going to see this weekend in the divisional round. Vecchio, as always, we appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Big weekend of football coming up. We obviously have some games tonight, as you said, between now and then. I'm ready to go.
The final 8 in the National Football League still in the chase for a Lombardi Trophy. Some might argue there's still value out there in the Super Bowl favorite, but I'm not going to say who that is. 4 divisional round matchups, Tom Vecchio, this weekend. 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Some hefty spreads. 9.5-point numbers in favor of both of the number 1 overall seeds. In the AFC, it's the Ravens, a 9.5-point favorite against the Texans. In the NFC, it's the San Francisco 49ers, a 9.5-point favorite against the Green Bay Packers. The Lions, a 6.5-point favorite against the Bucs. And then the marquee matchup in the divisional round finale in Buffalo, the Bills and the Chiefs, just a 2.5-point spread in favor of Buffalo. Vecchio, the 4 matchups that we have in the divisional round, which is your favorite?
That would be Bucs-Lions. I think that game is really interesting from an offensive perspective. We know Detroit can put up points, but the Bucs defense has been super solid, and also happens to be that the Lions defense hasn't been top tier. So I think we're going to see some scoring in that game. For the other games, I think we are in for a bit of a market correction, where last week we saw a lot of high scoring games, a lot of blowouts. I think we're in for the opposite this week, which are lower scoring games and a lot of close games. Not as much offense as people are expecting outside of Detroit and Tampa Bay.
Tom, you take a look at those 4 games coming up this weekend, and it's hard to predict the upsets here, right? Particularly when you have 2 teams with 10-point spreads essentially there with the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. But from your opinion, where could the shocker come from this weekend from those 4 games?
I think the shocker would be the Bucs. I think they have the longest odds right now to win the Super Bowl at plus 3,000, if I remember correctly. You know, they can win that game. Like I said, their defense has been super solid. They have the offense to keep up with Detroit. So if they're plus 3,000, they immediately jump to number 2, assuming that the 49ers win that game. So that would be the route to go. I know I said last week I'm on Detroit just because they offered value at the time, but obviously things have changed. And Tampa Bay at 30-1 would be the spot.
Yeah. Right now, the Buccaneers and the Texans tied for the longest odds to win Super Bowl 58. Even the Packers, who are a 9.5-point favorite against the 49ers, have a shorter price to win both the NFC Championship and Super Bowl 58 than the Buccaneers. So, Vecchio, as we look at those Super Bowl 58 odds, you are always one to find value. Where do you think the odds are at this moment outside of the Buccaneers if we look at the AFC component and 3 frontrunners in the Ravens, the Bills, and the Chiefs still left standing?
I mean, the value would be going to one of the alternate markets, as I always say. Like, you don't want to take those straight up, so you could look to maybe a Travis Kelce Super Bowl MVP. You know, my kind of hot take is that Mark Andrews is in for a big next 3 games, assuming that the Ravens get to the Super Bowl. And I think he's at 50-1 to win Super Bowl MVP, if I remember correctly from a few minutes ago. And I said this to Kevin on Game Time Decisions, where, like, this is like the perfect redemption arc for Mark Andrews and Baltimore. Deal with how many injuries do they deal with every single year? So him returning to the playoffs, back, ready to go, 3 huge games to lead them along with Lamar Jackson, obviously, to a Super Bowl. Mark Andrews is my sleeper pick for Super Bowl MVP.
Interesting stuff there. So if we are looking at that Super Bowl MVP market, going away from the quarterbacks, and if it is Mark Andrews, that would be a monster price that will come back on it. But I asked this question before today to Joe Ranieri. Christian McCaffrey, the chances of him actually winning MVP if the San Francisco 49ers get to the Super Bowl, it seems to be the most legitimate outcome here. Can he steal that if they get there?
Yeah, that was my take a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to be on board with it. I will say I am partially interested in Deebo Samuel, and this is kind of like the debate I've been having amongst myself, is that Deebo going for 100-plus yards, 100-plus combined yards, and 2 touchdowns, I don't think would shock anyone in the grand scheme of things. So while I said McCaffrey a couple of weeks ago, and I absolutely love him at 9.5-1, which is where he was, Deebo also makes a lot of sense. So you could take either of those, which I think are better prices compared to the outright for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl.
Tom Vecchio was on Run CMC when the number was plus 950 even before the playoffs got underway. Christian McCaffrey for the opening game against the Packers for the Niners postseason run on Saturday night. 89.5 rushing yards, 32.5 receiving yards, 126 and a hook is the combo prop. He has gone at least 100 yards from scrimmage outside of the final game he played week 17 with the calf injury issue really dating back to the end of October. Vecchio, the props are already out for this weekend. We're still 48 hours away from the divisional round kicking off. Are there any players, any numbers, any names we need to know that you are keying on this weekend?
Yeah, my number one prop for this week is Mike Evans over 68.5 receiving yards. As I mentioned, the Lions defense is not that good. During the regular season, they allowed 3,081 receiving yards to wide receivers. That's the third worst in the league, this regular season. So if I'm expecting points in that game, as I mentioned, Mike Evans coming off of a couple slow games, this is the spot that I think, again, a market correction for him. And we saw Puka Nacua have a huge game last week in a losing effort. And if the game script already has the Bucs playing from behind in a passing spot, Mike Evans is in for a huge week.
We're going to have to wait for NFL action on Saturday and Sunday, but tonight on the NBA Hardwood, it certainly heats up. A 5-game slate tonight, Tom. Let's get to it. 9 p.m. tip-off. That's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz, currently coming in here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. A favorite here for the road team, the Thunder, at a minus 3.5-point favorite, and I love this, a total at 244. Give us some insight tonight between the Thunder and the Jazz, Tom.
Yeah, this is a nice bounce back spot for the Thunder. They've lost a couple games. I think there's also a big bounce back spot for SGA. Both teams top 10 league in offensive pace. We're going to see a lot of scoring tonight. And SGA coming off some slow games, I think is in for a huge game. I wouldn't be surprised if he drops 40-plus real points tonight. But specifically, I like him over 43.5 PRA points, rebounds, plus assists. It's sitting at minus 118. Slow game against the Clippers. They play good defense. It is what it is. But his shot volume, his minutes, all of the usage are the exact same for SGA. Just a couple down games. It is what it is. That's going to change tonight going up against the Jazz.
2 straight games under 30, almost unheard of for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Had scored at least 30 in 12 of the 14 prior. I love the look to the bounce-back spot and not on the second leg of a road back-to-back out in Los Angeles. The Jazz have won 6 straight games. Oklahoma City this year, though, booked as the favorite. They are 19-6 straight up, and against the number, 17-8 ATS. Vecchio next up around the association tonight out in Sacramento. The Kings hosting the Indiana Pacers. Are we going to see the debut of Pascal Siakam? You'll wait. The over-under 248. Tyrese Halliburton still out of the lineup for Indiana as well. What do you expect tonight out in Sacktown?
Yeah, I haven't seen any indication that Siakam is going to be ready to go, and I like the Kings straight up in this game, or I should say against the spread. Coming off of 3 losses, especially that bad loss against Phoenix the other night, this is a winning spot for the Kings, considering they're shorthanded. Specifically, I like Sabonis over 34.5 points plus rebounds, sitting at minus 120. He's been great this year, a player that routinely pushes towards a double-double, triple-double on a nightly basis. I love the fact that he's going up against his former team. We also, again, need to see a big bounce-back game from the Kings. So roll everything together. Triple-double plus Kings win for Sabonis tonight, I think, is firmly on the table.
Tom, taking a look on the ice here. We're more than halfway through the NHL season. Give us an update on some Stanley Cup odds and who you think has the possibility to lift Lord Stanley's Cup.
So right now would be the Winnipeg Jets at 15-1. And I know I spoke highly about the Stars earlier in the season. And the Stars and the Avalanche have a lot of pedigree when it comes to the postseason. Obviously, the Avs won a couple years ago. Stars were in conference finals last year. They made it to the Stanley Cup against the Lightning. The Winnipeg Jets are awesome. And Connor Hellebuyck is a brick wall in net. The issue is that the Jets, the Avs, and the Stars all play in the same division. So no matter what, the Jets are going to have to play one of them in the first or the second round, depending on where they finish in that division. So at 15-1, the Jets make a lot of sense right now, but you have to understand that they have a very difficult path to get there. And then even if they make it past those teams, they would have to get past the Oilers or the Golden Knights on the other side. Yeah. And they also don't have the postseason pedigree. That's why their number is longer compared to the Stars, the Avs, despite the fact that the Jets lead the division. So there's a lot going on. You can get the Jets down 15-1. If they drop any lower, it's a stay away spot.
Winnipeg right now, 62 points, tied for the most in the National Hockey League alongside the Vancouver Canucks. A big one for the country of Canada trying to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup once again. Might the Maple Leafs factor into that? An all-Canada showdown in Calgary tonight. The Leafs, a -126 road money line favorite. Vecchio, what do you like in that matchup this evening?
Keep it straightforward with William Nylander for goals, +135. He signed a huge contract, 8 years, $92 million, week and a half ago. Since then, he has 21 shots on goal in these 5 games, no goals. He was +150 for a goal the other night. It's at +135. I think this is the line of where it should be. So I wouldn't go any lower on this, but he's simply due for a goal. And since the start of January, the Flames defense is outperforming their actual goals allowed versus their expected goals allowed. And he's just a super high volume shooter that hasn't scored as of late. So I'll buy this bounce back spot along with Tage Thompson, whose game got canceled last night because of the weather in Buffalo. Tage Thompson versus Chicago tonight.
A jam-packed slate, 13 NHL games on the ice tonight. The Bruins host the Colorado Avalanche. The Bees, a -150 home money line favorite. The Rangers, a slight favorite out in Las Vegas against the Golden Knights. Tom Vecchio, as always, we appreciate the prop perspective and the jack of all trades that you are. Thank you for being here on this Thursday on the early line with more Hardwood Handicaps to come next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Spearkits to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The two premier hardwood handicappers on the SportsGrid network are here for you live on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. We get you set for a night around the association. Not the largest of slates, but also some conference college basketball action as well. Donnie, we heard from Tom Vecchio a couple of the props that he likes tonight and his feels around the NBA. We start with a game that Vecchio just mentioned, Domantas Sabonis against his former team in Indiana. You know that trade very well that sent Tyrese Halliburton to Indianapolis and Sabonis to Sacramento. Well, the Kings, a 7-point favorite at home tonight in Sacktown. The over-under 248. Indiana involved in a trade recently, yesterday afternoon, acquiring Pascal Siakam from Toronto. He is not expected to make his debut in a Pacers uniform tonight, and Tyrese Halliburton has been sidelined for the past couple of days as well. No props out for Indiana, but a ton of points expected, 248 being that total tonight in Sacramento.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see because in the anticipated starting lineup tonight, Ben, it looks like we do have Tyrese Halliburton supposed to make his debut back from his injury. But if he doesn't, I can't see this game staying around that 248 level. If he's in, sure, that tempo is going to get pushed. But do they make their debut together on the court is the biggest question here. And that's from an Indiana perspective. But if we're looking from the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to say right now, also, if Halliburton is coming back to this game, Ben, are we just getting Tyrese Halliburton before the injury? We're like, hey, kid, get out there 37 minutes and light it up on the dance floor. I don't think that's going to happen tonight. So looking early in the morning as one of these handicaps, which yesterday I got the benefit of taking the Cleveland early with the 4 points. Now, granted, they didn't need the 4 points. They didn't even need 30 points in that game. They absolutely smoked the doors off the Bucks. But today, I'll go with the Kings as the favorite because I actually don't know who's going to be showing up with that starting lineup today for those Pacers.
The Pacers started out this year, pretty much every game was over. We saw totals into the 250s. We saw totals into the 260s. They have slowed down off that pace. And Tyrese Halliburton was injured over a week ago on Monday, January 8th against the Boston Celtics. Left that game after only playing about 13 minutes. Has missed the last 4 games for the Pacers. In those 4 games without Halliburton, every game has gone under. If he is not there, it is natural to think a large total still, upwards of 248, would still stay under. Sacramento as a favorite this year, 14-15 against the spread. Not the best at covering numbers as the favorite side. Tom Vecchio gave you our guy, Donnie, PRA, but just the points and rebounds for Domantas Sabonis tonight, over 34.5. A guy that fills it up across the stat sheet. Indiana, meanwhile, as an underdog this year, 13-10 against the spread with a 12-11 outright record as an underdog. Indiana, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, the 3 teams around the NBA that have a winning record straight up as an underdog this season as well. Now, next up, we go to Utah. In Salt Lake, it's the Jazz hosting the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC, back-to-back losses in LA on 2 back-to-back games on the weekend and then early this week. Do want to take a moment here. Of course, we broke down a game yesterday, Donnie, that was supposed to happen between the Utah Jazz and the Golden State Warriors. That game was postponed because of a very scary incident around Warriors assistant coach Dejan Milojevic, who unfortunately passed away after suffering a heart attack. So the game was postponed. We send our best to the Warriors, the Golden State community, and of course everybody around the NBA. So the Warriors and the Jazz, the game was postponed last night. Utah now back into the action tonight in Salt Lake. The Jazz, meanwhile, Donnie, have won 6 consecutive games after OKC has dropped a few in a row. But the Thunder booked as a road favorite tonight in Salt Lake, laying 3.5.
Yeah, I'm reading that number now. If we're going to get 3.5 here as a favorite, I'm going to take OKC. And as you said, haven't playing their best basketball. The Utah Jazz playing some very good basketball. Let's take a look at the starting lineup tonight. SGA, obviously, Giddey, Dort, Williams, and Holmgren. Now, look, handicappers look for every edge you could possibly get here, right? And if you know you're going to work and you're bringing some personal issues along with you, it's probably going to affect your play. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is anybody's been watching in the highlights here, or especially highlights in the news wire, let's just say. Josh Giddey was cleared of all wrongdoing with whatever he was doing off of the court. Now, the reason I bring this up is you might be getting a guy that was, had those sandbags over him for a couple weeks here, and every arena he goes to, he's hearing it there, and quite frankly, maybe waiting on a call from his lawyer that things aren't working out in his favor. Now, let's just say tonight that is off. That's going to help him a lot and maybe have some clarity. So again, as much as you're taking a look at a situation, sometimes you have to take advantage of those. Maybe Josh Giddey is a decent look tonight, but overall, I'm taking a look at OKC to win and cover this game on the road.
Yeah, me as well, Donnie. 17-9 for Oklahoma City this year when booked as the favorite, snapping Utah's 6-game win streak. But the Jazz are a surprising team out west that could factor into the play-in tournament conversation in the Western Conference. Utah as the underdog this season, 14-1 against the spread. 14 of those 18 covers an outright victory. We shared yesterday when the Jazz were booked as a favorite in the game that was postponed against Golden State. Utah as a favorite this year, when booked as the favorite side, it is for a reason. 7-2 against the spread. The Jazz, one of the best cover teams around the NBA. And I would look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Vecchio gave you points and assists. I'm just going to look at points, Donnie. The guy's gone under 30 in 2 straight games. He had gone over 30 or at least 30 plus in 12 of the 14 prior. The prop that's normally 32.5, 33.5 is a slight discount tonight, 31 and a hook for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So, Donnie, we talked about the trade, Pascal Siakam being sent by the Raptors to Indianapolis to join the Pacers. The Raptors in return, 3 first-round picks, Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora make their way back to the 6. The Raptors at home tonight as a 2-point underdog against the Chicago Bulls, over under 227. Again, the Raptors not really focused on winning this year after the big trades Toronto has made over the past 2.5 weeks or so.
It feels like everybody probably would jump on the Chicago Bulls here, Ben. We're like, oh, look, the Raptors are tearing it down. They're raising the white flag. But those guys get paid, too, that are showing the Raptors roster here. I'll take them at home, but also let's focus on R.J. Barrett. Last 2 games here, Ben, 19 field goal attempts and 14 field goal attempts, which came out to be 26 points and 24 points. There's a lot more shots to go around here on Toronto, and I'm not sure if the bookmakers are up to the ante of who's actually going to get those. I'll bet on R.J. Barrett tonight and his points prop to the over here, and also take a flyer on Toronto, because I know everybody is not going to want to take that situation. The season's over for them. You can't back them. You might get that little bump tonight from that Toronto roster, and also some free points out of a couple of those guys, which you have to make up for the points that Siakam certainly was scoring.
What to make of Chicago in the 9 spot, currently in the Eastern Conference, but 4 games below 500. I'm sure some in the Windy City would hope they would follow what the Raptors are doing, tear it down and build it back up, but Chicago kind of in limbo. Just 5 games in the association tonight. The Knicks also a 12-point home favorite against the Washington Wizards. Total 234 and a hook. The Knicks beat the Rockets last night by 14. The Knicks have won 7 of their last 9 games, and all 7 of those victories, the game has gone under. That's Tom Thibodeau basketball. And out in Minnesota, the Timberwolves, second leg of a back-to-back, but changing venue. Last night they won by 8, did not cover as a double-digit favorite in Detroit. Tonight a 12.5-point favorite against the Memphis Grizzlies, over-under 214 and a hook. To college basketball we go. A big night in the American. The 2 frontrunners right now, the 2 favorites, Memphis and FAU, both in action. The Tigers, for Penny Hardaway, hosting South Florida. Memphis booked as an 11.5-point home favorite. The over-under 157 and a hook.
Yeah, I'm looking at that 157.5 and probably going to the over. Why? Check out the last 2 games that Memphis played, hit the century mark in both of those games and at home. If we just factor into conference play, Memphis number 1 overall with a 118.9 efficiency rating, which is crazy good here. And take a look at this factor, Ben. You know me, I love to talk about the free throw line. You know who fouls the most in conference play? It's South Florida. You know who gets to the line more than any other team in conference play? It's Memphis. This spells for me an over that we'll look at, but more importantly, Memphis is going to be the team that carries this, maybe a team total to the over for the Memphis Tigers.
A 15-2 basketball team, now ranked 10th in the country. They have won 10 straight games. They haven't often covered, booked as the favorite, but they did cover in their last game against Wichita State as a 4.5-point favorite. But as the favored side this year, the Tigers just 7-10 against the spread. But in this 10-game win streak, 7 of those 10 games to the over, as Donnie shared. 107 in overtime against UTSA, 112 in regulation against Wichita State, the Shockers, over the weekend. Speaking of those Shockers, they take on FAU tonight as well. The Owls, still a top 25 team, just hanging on to the number 23 ranking in college basketball. FAU booked as a 14.5-point favorite, over under 153.5. Wichita State is a program many know, Donnie, at the mid-major level of being an upstart team. Not so much here as of late. FAU nearly a 15-point home favorite.
Yeah, they should smash tonight. I think Florida Atlantic should be the side, and rightfully so. Looking at conference play, 14 teams in the conference here, Ben. Wichita State, 13th rating on offense, 13th rating on defense. That's never a good sign. And also, all those Wichita State teams over the years that were so dominant, coming into this game, losers of 7 of 8. How about this? Wichita State's offense, 14th in conference play at turning the basketball over themselves. And here's the worst-case scenario. When you're looking to get those free points, Ben, again, it's so much more you take a look at free throw shooting in college than you do the NBA because of the discrepancies here. 14 teams again in conference play. You know who's the worst at 58%? It's Wichita. So not only can't you shoot the basketball, you turn it over way too much. And when you do get the line for free shots here, you can't even take advantage of it. And also, here's another indicator that you like where Wichita State's playing no defense. 14th in conference play defending the three-point shot, Ben. 14th in conference play at defending inside the arc. What did they do well? Absolutely nothing. FAU should roll.
I think you could look at FAU scoring a ton of points at home tonight in Boca. Wichita State, as Donnie said, lost 5 straight games, and they haven't covered in any of those 5. 3 as an underdog. 5 games as a dog this year for the Shockers. It has not been pretty. 0-5 against the spread. Memphis, the slight favorite in the AAC, plus 130, only 5 cents back. Dusty May's Owls of FAU plus 135. It seems to be a 2-team race for that top spot in the American. Now we go out to the Big Ten, where winning on the road this year at the power conference level in conference matchups is incredibly difficult. Can Illinois pull it off tonight? A 2.5-point favorite. Those Fighting Illini on the road in Ann Arbor against Michigan. The over-under 153.5. The Wolverines held on for a win against Ohio State on Monday with the Fab Five all in attendance, but Illinois a slight 2.5-point favorite tonight.
Yeah, you're going to need the Fab Five to take the court tonight and hope for a win. But having said that, like, Michigan is not a great basketball team by any stretch this season. But as you saw that graphic come up, you say, now hold on. Why is this line only 2.5 points here? It's there for good reason. Illinois is the number 3 overall most efficient team on offense in Big Ten play so far, and number 4 on defense. What gives? Shouldn't it be an easy win for Illinois? Beware tonight. You know what? I'm going with Michigan here to pull the slight upset because that line tells me so, Ben.
Illinois does have what is a rarity this year. They handed Rutgers its only home loss in the RAC all season long and a Big Ten road win back to start off December. But winning on the road is crazy, and it's crazy difficult for Illinois to accomplish. Is that 2.5-point number representative of Illinois not playing with Terrence Shannon Jr. and dropping 2 of its last 3? Or is it because it's a Michigan line at home inside the Chrysler Center tonight? I would keep an eye on Marcus Damask. He is the starter for Illinois that has filled in with the scoring in the absence of Shannon Jr. 19.5 points, his prop tonight. A best bet is up next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was a
him?
disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here to close out our 3 hours together on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside, and even when we go, the SportsGrid app is always here. You can download the app by scanning the QR code on your screen or at the Apple or the Play Store. Inside the SportsGrid app, something known as 5-star plays. We call those best bets. We do that here before we say farewell. And before we say goodbye, it is time for bye, bye, bye. Donnie Rightside, it's a Thursday. What is the best bet for this Thursday night?
Let's keep it simple. Those Memphis Tigers at home taking on USF. I told you how well their offense has played, going over the century mark in their past 2 games. I'm not sure they get to the century mark tonight, but I think they can get 85-plus points. I'm going to take Memphis's team total over 84.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's cheer on some offense tonight.
I think the other thing could be the case in the American as well. Team total for FAU at home in Boca against Wichita State. Also 84.5. I like that look to the over for the Owls. My best bet on this Thursday, Michigan State at home inside the Breslin Center. A couple of days off, and yes, it is my birthday. Shout out to the guys in the back. Yeah. Shout out to Jesse Metzger for another beautiful graphic. I hit a couple of bets last night. We hope here to start off year number 30 for me on this earth. The good times keep on rolling. As our technical director, Matt Malalam, said, is it bye, bye, bye as a best bet, or is it Ben's birthday bet? We'll see. Michigan State, couple of days off, more practice. We get excited for college basketball, as JY knows well.
Yep.
Michigan State, first half number covering 6.5 against Minnesota. That's how I see it. Any closing thoughts, Donnie, on this Thursday?
No closing thoughts, but a football Friday tomorrow to get you people ready to go for this weekend. Get fired up right now, people. But no thoughts.
I mean, you already wished me a happy birthday to start the show, so I wouldn't expect anything else. We'll see you on a Football Friday starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time to set the stage for the divisional round. We'll see you tomorrow.